Joining us now, the first Democrat from Alabama elected to the U.S. Senate in 25 years, Senator Doug Jones. He's out today with a new book entitled Bending Toward Justice, the Birmingham church bombing that changed the course of civil rights. We'll get to that in just a moment. Senator, welcome. Great to have you with us. I want to ask you first, though, about the terrible, devastating tornadoes that hit your state. At least 23 people dead, including children there. Our hearts go out to your state. Our hearts go out to you. What else can you tell us about what's happening in the state of Alabama in terms of recovery right now?
Well, thank you very much for that. Unfortunately, this is an all too familiar scene for folks in Alabama, whether it's tornadoes or hurricanes. But we have an incredible emergency management agency from all counties in the state. Governor Ivey and her team are on the ground doing incredible work down there. I think they're still right now in some search and rescue, going through all of the damage and devastation to make sure that they can find all the injured. Hopefully that death toll will not rise, but that remains to be seen. And then we'll start the efforts to rebuild, which we do. Alabama has a resilient people, and they are neighborly. There are people coming from all over to try to help those folks in Beauregard and Smith Station and in Lee County. So it's going to go on, and we will rise and we will rebuild.
Those pictures that we're looking at as you speak, Senator, are absolutely breathtaking. As you know better than I, unlike a hurricane, you just don't get warning for these things. They drop on top of you before you can get out of the way.
No, we've done a better job, but it's still very quickly. You see these lines of storms, and then all of a sudden they're on top of you before. And I will tell you, I've seen that damage firsthand, not this particular storm. You can see the videos, you can see the photographs, but until you actually witness this, you can't possibly imagine. It will take your breath away, the devastation that these tornadoes can do. And so our hearts and prayers are going out, but I'm also very proud of the response that the people of Alabama are showing right now. Absolutely. And thank all of those around the country for their thoughts and prayers and support as well.
Well, we're sending ours as well. We just cannot believe these pictures we're seeing. We'll stay on this story with you, Senator. Before we get to your book, which is fascinating, can't wait to talk about it, I want to ask you about some of the news this morning, including House Democrats, the House Judiciary Committee led by Jerry Nadler, a fellow Democrat, sending out letters to 80 people, more than 80 people in the life and orbit of President Trump, whether it's in the White House or his business life or his campaign or his transition. They're touching all aspects of his life. This is what was promised during the campaign season. The Democrats said if we get elected, we take over these committees in the House and we will exercise our right to oversee the President of the United States and this White House. Do you support the efforts by Jerry Nadler? Do you think it's a good idea to have this sweeping investigation?
Well, I think certainly you have to start oversight. I think the House folks are in a much better position than I am. They are seeing the evidence, and you got to go where evidence leads you. And I think that that's the biggest issue that the House Democrats are facing right now. They want to get the evidence in. As it comes in, you just can't ignore certain things. So they're going to be looking at every aspect possible. We've gone for 2 years with no oversight whatsoever. I do think this, though. I do think we have to be very careful not to make this about an individual and make this about oversight and about alleged criminal activity or obstruction and not about an individual. I've seen that too many times with prosecutors, but I think certainly there's got to be this significant oversight into what's going on with the administration.
Isn't this pretty clearly, Senator, about one individual, President Trump?
No, I don't think it is about one individual. I think it's about the activities of the administration at this point. Clearly, there are people, including the president, that are involved in that for sure. But I don't think that you can say right now at all that this is clearly focused on one individual. I think they are going where they have some information, and I think that that's the key. I don't think you issue broad-range subpoenas without some information that there is information there that you need for that oversight responsibility. I think that's the responsible thing to do.
Senator, there's an Alabama woman, an American-born woman, now currently in Syria being held. She is being represented by a couple of lawyers who are intent on getting her back to the United States based upon the fact they claim she's an American citizen, which she once was. What's your view on that? Should she be allowed to return to this country? Should she be allowed to return to this country in handcuffs? What's your view?
Well, my view about that is I think she needs to face justice. Now, I don't know the details about her citizenship. That's all going to be between the courts and the State Department. But, as a former prosecutor who's put a couple of domestic terrorists in prison before. I just have a faith in the American system of justice, in this Department of Justice, and in any succeeding Department of Justice, to make sure that those who have committed crimes against the people of the United States are held accountable. I just think it sends a wrong message that when someone can commit crimes against the United States, flee to another country, that they essentially get out of a get out of jail free card to remain somewhere other than in this country. I think it's better to bring her back, not with open arms, not with a welcoming party, but to face the American system of justice. She committed a crime against this American people, and she should face the consequences.
Senator, you were the first Democrat to support the president's pick for Attorney General William Barr. Yesterday, it came out that Barr will not recuse himself from overseeing the Russia investigation. Does that concern you, or do you feel like that's an appropriate decision?
No, I think it's an appropriate decision. I didn't see anything in his background in my due diligence about Bill Barr, and I did a lot as someone who has been with the Justice Department on 2 separate occasions. I have followed his career. I know him, and I talked to him extensively about that. I didn't see anything that would require him to recuse himself in the Russia investigation. I feel that he will do the right thing. I think he's going to protect the Mueller investigation, and I do believe he will do what he can to make sure as much of that Mueller report is made public as possible.
Senator, your book is called Bending Toward Justice, the Birmingham church bombing that changed the course of civil rights. It was that day in September in 1963 when 4 little girls were killed as Klansmen planted sticks of dynamite underneath that church. Why was now the time to write this book for you, and what new light do you shed on one of the darkest days in recent American history?
Well, the timing just was fortuitous, because that had been a work in progress for many, many years. I think ever since those cases was over, I always felt that the case should be put down, all of the case. What happened in Birmingham in 1963, as we know it, how they came together to prosecute those cases successfully, and to get the story, to let everybody see, go behind the curtain to see what happened, and how we put the cases together, some 37 and 38 years later. It just took a long time for me to pull that together. But I do think this. I do think that it is important to remind people what happened in the civil rights era of the 50s and 60s in particular, and the crimes and the atrocities. Part of that, the church bombing occurred because of the rhetoric of public officials, whether it was George Wallace or Bull Connor. We now see so much rhetoric on both the social media and in our public life that we have to remind people of what happened, so that we hopefully don't do that and go back there again. And it's not just a black and white issue anymore. It involves race, religion, gender, you name it. And there is so much hate and rhetoric in there and divisiveness that I think this is an important reminder to people that we need to care for each other more, we need to respect each other more, and try to consider things from other people's point of view.
Senator Gene Robinson has a question for you. Gene?
Sure.
Yeah, Senator, just to follow up, I mean, we are at a moment when race relations in this country seem to have gone backwards. I see sort of expressions of outright, overt, vicious racism that I haven't really seen since my childhood in the South. And so, as another Southerner and an American, how do you see this atmosphere? And you hope that we get out of it, but how do we get out of it? How do we get back on the path of that bending arc, bending toward justice rather than away from it?
Gene, it's a great question, and it's something I think all Americans should be concerned about these days. Unfortunately, I think we see so much in social media where people can just sit behind in their silos and behind closed doors, and they can just express things that they would never have said to someone face to face, and it's very troubling. I think we have to have more dialogues in this country about race and about religion and about gender equality and those kind of things. It's a much broader conversation that I think we have to have. And I think we have to dial back the rhetoric. And you're absolutely right. You see it. You see the overt racism, but I also think you also see what I call political racism, and that is the efforts to deny people the right to vote, not because of a hatred of a race, but because of the political power that it brings. And I think all of that comes into play. And people just go to their corners when this comes up, and instead of having the conversations, they just go to their corners and want to yell at each other. And we got to get get over that. We've got to not have those kind of divisive politics.
So, Senator, social media certainly inflames the situation on an almost minute-by-minute basis in this country. But what's your view on words as weapons employed by the President of the United States, not necessarily on race, but on division? I mean, we have enough divisions in this country, and yet a lot of what he seems to be saying exacerbates divisions.
I agree with that, and it's very disappointing. I don't think the president or any public official or any individual should be saying those kind of things. And again, that kind of goes back to what I think is more of a political play right now, to try to, just talk to the base and to get them supportive and to ensure support. But it's very, very divisive. I've been concerned about that during the campaign, comments following Charleston and particularly Charlottesville. I think that those things kind of hurt us. And I go back to what happened in Alabama. I think anyone will tell you that studied the history of the civil rights movement in the South, that people like Wallace and Connor and Ross Barnett and those folks, they empowered people to do things that they might not otherwise do. Law-abiding citizens that will take matters into their own hands because they think they are empowered to do it because of public official support. And we've got to be very, very careful about that.
The book is Bending Toward Justice, the Birmingham church bombing that changed the course of civil rights. It is out today. If you've never been to Birmingham and stood there next to the 16th Street Baptist Church, it's something you ought to do at least once in your life. Senator Doug Jones, we appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Still ahead this morning, new questions about whether longtime Trump ally Roger Stone violated his strict gag order after one of his latest Instagram posts got the attention of Robert Mueller. That's coming up on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.